How cute is this little bag, right? I made it with Simplicity 3009. This little bag here, adorable. I used, this is matching the coat that I made, just like the girl in the photo, right? She has a bag matching her coat. It's super trendy. It's not something that's gonna last in my bag stash forever and ever. I have no delusions that it's a Chanel bag, but everything here, this vinyl, the snap, this plush fabric, and the lining, and the zipper, were all in my studio. This really nice, beautiful lining. All of this stuff is in my studio. So this bag didn't cost me anything, and it's absolutely adorable, super trendy. I'm gonna have a lot of fun wearing it. Today, we are going to work on Simplicity 3009. We're gonna make this bag. Now, I don't know about you, I've made tote bags before, but I have never made a fashion bag, so this is my first one. I had leftovers from making this fur jacket, so I'm making the bag exactly the same as the jacket so they can be worn together. The first thing, so I have this super soft kind of minky fabric, and it does say to interface it, and I wasn't sure how it was gonna go, so I tested it first. I used this fairly heavy interfacing. It's a coat interfacing that I got from Minerva to test it to see if it worked, and it worked fine. It does make it darker on the back. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but that's okay because I'm lining it with this wild brocade. So I'm all right with that. So I interfaced all my pieces, and you can see how nice, they have a nice little stiffness to them. This is the original fabric, and you can see how soft it is. And then this has this little bit of stiffness, and it does change the color a little bit, but that's okay. Like I said, the blue is gonna be behind it anyway, so it was gonna change the color for sure. So I interfaced all my pieces. I tested this vinyl. I have this vinyl, and I tested that before I actually pressed it on my cutout piece. And I used up all of that scrap fabric, which is what I love. I love being able to use up everything. For the last piece, I finished up the dark coat interfacing, which I'm really happy about that. I always love finishing up stuff because I don't like it hanging around. I don't want to throw it away. So for the long piece for the strap, I used my regular tricot interfacing on this faux kind of copper vinyl pleather that I had left over from a project. It's actually a Halloween project, but you know. All right, the first thing we're gonna do is put in our zipper. So I have a regular 14-inch polyester zipper, and then you're gonna stitch the edges. I finished the edge because this fur is just crazy. You're gonna stitch to these dots here that you have on the large dots on the top of your bag. So you're gonna stitch from the edge to those large dots. Now it says to press the seams open. I can't press this fur. All right, so you're gonna fold your edges down, and you want them to look like this. So you have this little opening inside. I've just pinned mine because you can see this fur is a little crazy. And then you're gonna attach the zipper, and you're gonna place the zipper pull side down. And you want that pull you don't want it past where you have this opening here, right? You want the pull to be able to fit into that opening. So this 14-inch zipper is a little long. So you wanna have, on this side, you wanna be able to see this zipper pull. You don't want it too far in here because then you're constantly gonna be fishing it out. So we're going to pin our zipper to this salvage edge that we have and stitch it from the right side. So this is why you really wanna press it if you can. I can't press mine, but I am going to pin it all the way down. And with a 14-inch zipper, it's gonna be a little long, unless you wanna put the zipper way up here and you wanna fish for that zipper, which I personally don't want to do. I want my zipper right where I want it, when I wanna open it, right? So essentially, we're gonna sew, this is now folded, right? We have this folded seam allowance, and we're gonna sew that to the zipper, not going through the zipper teeth. So we're gonna use a zipper foot and sew each side of that so we have a zipper in the middle of this opening. Sounds simple. I tried sewing this zipper their way. It did not go well. So this is what I'm going to do, and I would advise you to do the same thing. So you're gonna lay this down so the zipper is face down between this opening here. And then what I did is I extended one of the seam allowances and I unzipped the zipper. All right, so I unzipped the zipper and I sewed it to the seam allowance all the way down. And then what I'm gonna do, make sure you sew the right side of the zipper to the right side of the seam allowance. And then I'm gonna sew this side, right? So now I unzipped it, I stitched this along the seam allowance. So now when I turn it back around, you can see it's hidden by the fur, but you can see my zipper teeth there, right? So my zipper is sewed in. Oh, it's just so much easier than trying to fold it. Now you could go back and top stitch this if you really wanted that top stitch look, but I'm perfectly happy with this. So now I'm gonna zip up my zipper. All right, so now you can see my zipper is zipped and it's facing up, and I'm looking at the right side, and this edge is going to get sewed to that piece of the zipper. I'm just putting a pin in here to hold the zipper in place, and then I can flip it over. And now I know this is the piece that I want stitched to this facing, and I'm gonna stitch it, not on top, but close. Unzip it first, it'll be easier to stitch, and then you just hold it open and stitch it to the seam allowance. So much easier. All right, that zipper went way, way better. So you can't even see it. It doesn't need to be top stitched. You certainly can top stitch it if you'd like, but it works beautifully. So now I have this piece with the zipper in it, and the back looks fine, right? The zipper is sewed down. It will roll, so if you don't want it to roll, go back and top stitch it, but I'm perfectly fine with this. Now, the zipper is 14 inches, so it's too long. So what you want to do is you can either leave this hanging around, but there's no need. I took this in the machine and slowly back stitched several times. It's a plastic zipper, so that's easy enough to do. And then just don't use your good scissors, and then you can just lop it off just like that. This will stop the zipper pull from going too far. So the next thing you want to do is sew your tab. So I sewed it right sides together, and then I cleaned up the edges. It says to trim it. You want to make sure that it's symmetrical, like you curve those corners the right way, and you can give it a few snips in the corners so it will turn better. That fabric really needs somewhere to go. You want to make sure you back tack when you get to the edges up at the top, because you're doing this and it will come unraveled, and you don't want that. So we're going to turn it inside right. To kind of fluff and fold a little to get it exactly the way you want it. And if the curves are too much for you, make it square. You know, just go sew off and sew across and sew off, and you can make it square, and then no one will be the wiser. Okay, I'm happy with that. I want to make sure that those seams like come apart, right? Because they'll roll in on themselves, and then you'll get this ridge, and you don't want that. You're gonna put some time and effort into this. You want it to look good. While I'm top stitching this, because I have to change the thread in my machine to do that, I sewed my strap right sides together, and then I trimmed the edges with my overlocker, but you could trim them with the scissors. I'm going to turn that inside right, and I'm also going to top stitch that, edge stitch that all the way around, because I only want to have to change my the thread to this copper color once. So I'm going to get both of those projects done at the same time. So here is the tab. Turned it inside right and stitched it along the edge. I just used my edge foot to stitch it, and then we want to apply it to our bag. So on piece 12, there's these two little notches up here at the top. So we're going to lay this on our pattern and mark those two little notches, and this is going to fit right on the bag this way. So think about which side you want to have up. You want to see, because you want your best side down towards the bag. I'm just going to pin this on here. In between those notches. Right. So it looks like that. I'm just going to run a stitch across here. That's in place. This is going to go this way when we actually latch up our bag. So that's terrific. Now we've turned the strap. I've already sewn the strap and turned it. This fabric is super slippery. I actually did get a couple of little notches on the end, little pleats, but if I take this out, I'm gonna lose the consistency of the stitch, and the bottom looks great, so I'm gonna use that as the right side. I'm just gonna make sure that that's the right side of my strap. Once you're happy with the position of your tab, don't forget to fold it over and stitch it down, because you don't, when it flops over, you don't want to see all that raw edge, so you want it stitched down before it flops over and looks like that. We're almost done. So the strap, we're matching up the large dots on the strap piece and the large and small dots on your pattern piece. So if you look at your strap piece, essentially it's folded this way now, and it has that little groove notch in it. So this is what we have, right? And this gets sewn this way at an angle. So these dots match up. So we're going to do the same thing with this piece. We're going to stitch it at an angle, and it's going to be, we're just going to baste it into the seam allowance, because we want to make sure that we sew it when we sew the sides, and you want to make sure that the strap that you have that you want is the right side up, right? Okay, now we're going to try it. We have to make sure that we keep this strap out of the way. We're going to fold this together. This is going to be a little bit of a challenge. We're going to sew from the top down to the small dot. So on your pattern piece, whoopsie, you're going to sew down to the small dot here. Who knew bags are so complicated? And you can do that on both sides. So you want to make sure you don't twist your strap in there. So my strap is in there. I'm just going to sew from here to here on each side. Never in a million years did I think bags were this complicated, but they do require some effort. So you want to make sure that your cross seams here, this is my top and this is where my strap is, you can see it coming through there, that cross seam is a good square. Now we're going to take piece 13, which is our side and bottom piece. Weird triangle looking thing, and we're going to add the bottom to this bag. So you want to make sure to get that strap out of the way. You also want to make sure that you open up your zipper, because if you don't, you won't be able to turn the bag inside right, because at this point we're going to enclose the bottom of the bag. So we're going to match these corners. So you have this triangle thing, so there's corners here. These match the corners of the bottom of your bag. And the pattern suggests you pivot. I strongly disagree. I think that pivoting, you don't always get, the needle doesn't always get sunk into and connected with the bobbin thread. And so sometimes when you're going around a corner, and if you pivot and they aren't completely connected, then what happens is you get a skip stitch and you don't have a nice square corner. And this is the outside of our bag. We want this to have a nice square corner. So you can see that I've sewn this. I'm going to sew this flat piece here, and I'm going to sew up along the sides. To this point where I sewed. It's a little fussy. So my suggestion is to sew these two straight edges first, and then come back and play with these edges, sewing this way, and then we're going to sew, because trying to do this all at once there's a lot of fabric and a lot of bunching. I think you're much better off just sewing these 2 straight pieces, and then we'll come back and look at the side panels. Taking it out in little bits and chunks is much easier. All right, so now I've sewn these side seams. I didn't sew all the way to the corner because I want to be able to flip this. And I'm going to have to clip this little seam so this opens up. So this gives me an opportunity to do that. And I can just go in and clip it. And then I can get a nice turned corner on that all the way up to this dot spot. See how much nicer that is than trying to maneuver that all in the machine all at the same time. We can get it even. And I can take care of this side. Put a little clip in there. It opens up and turns. And see how much nicer a corner I'm going to get than trying to pivot that. I have more control. Control is important. And then I'm going to sew this up to a peak. They're going to come together. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And you can see how that makes this, it's going to make this bottom of the bags. All right, so you can see I sewed from the corner all the way up to the peak, and then I backstitched, and then I took it out and I did this side. And that way I get a really nice juncture here at the peak. So now we're just going to turn it inside right. La-da-da. This is why we leave the zipper open, right? And fluff out our little corners. So you can see our little triangle corners look great. Just poke them out a little bit. Now we're going to do the lining, and we're going to construct the lining almost identical to the way that we did the bag. We're going to sew these, excuse me, we're going to sew the lining down to the dots and then insert the side pieces. And then once we get that, we're going to insert it into our bag and then hand stitch it. Put a little snap on here and we are good to go. All right, so here's our lining. So the same way as the bag, except the top is open. And we want the right side of the lining inside the bag. So we're going to leave it like this with the wrong side out. And we're going to put the wrong side to the wrong side of the bag. Because when you open up your bag, you want the nice, pretty lining inside. And then if you've ever done any kind of zipper work, you're just going to fold the edge of the lining down. And I just finished the edge of the lining. And you're going to hand sew it to the back of the zipper tape all the way around. There really isn't any way to do it with the machine. So it has to be done by hand. That's probably the most annoying part of this. And then I have these fun, huge snaps. So I'm going to sew a snap onto the bag and then one onto the bottom of my tab and close up my bag, and we'll see it when it's done.